Okay, so I've been talking about evolution and how I've come to the conclusion about evolution and where it's come from. Here's some interesting knowledge I came across when I was studying about the topic um, on the topics of creation and evolution and trying to come to the conclusion of which one is correct. Now, to be honest, I was biased from the start because I had had many spiritual experiences. So this is a disclaimer. I was biased. Okay, I had had spiritual experiences, so I knew God was real. Okay, so that with that knowledge in mind, I approached the study and the topics of evolution and creation. Um, I believe whichever way you go to approach a study and where you're coming from, your bias absolutely will be a factor in your study, in your evaluations. I mean, it's I think it would be impossible for me to have been unbiased because of that. Okay, so when I studied evolution, I had a bias towards creation, but um, I still wanted to know the truth. Okay, even with the bias, I still wanted to know. I was willing to know if evolution stacked up and creation didn't. I was willing to accept the findings and the fact. But I was pleasantly surprised that evolution didn't stack up. Every time I analysed it, and the more I threw at it, and that fear of it actually might be true dissipated. Um, and I had my faith was getting stronger and stronger, and every time the more I studied it, the more I studied it, my faith in creation got stronger and stronger. And I guess, I approached the subject like, oh, maybe it's true. And so I was really fearful that evolution might have been true when I studied it. And I found it wasn't. I really categorically 100%, totally 100% with all integrity, utterly 100% believe it is not correct, that 100% the Bible is completely correct. I'm talking 100% correct about the age of the earth, about us not coming from apes, that man was created as actually a man, as a human being, and uh, uh, not millions of years in death and mutations to have man pop up. Okay, so creation, 100% totally am convinced from my studies. Okay, so that's with all integrity and not trying to mislead people or yeah, not trying to promote something I don't fully believe or have not tried to find out the truth about. I have tried to find out the truth. Okay, I've really put in the effort. Um, and yeah, I was an active evangelist, and I used to debate evolutionists, and I used to debate people from different religions, and Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Muslims, and you name it. Everyone I could come across, witches, Wicca, the Wicca witches, apparently white witches, whatever. Um, People from um, ashrams, New Age groups, everyone, spiritualists, had a lot of encounters with um, all these people from all these different ones, and just got into the study of Freemasons and all sorts of stuff. I just loved learning about cults and different religions and all sorts of stuff. It was really my buzz. Evolution dedicated at least a good 3 years to it, and I got quite a solid understanding of this topic. I believe, to the point where I was convinced enough, and any more study would have been useless for me. It would have been wasted time, really, because it is endless, 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 endless. Okay. Um, Yeah, well, some of the things, let's think about some of them. Some of the facts, one of the facts that maybe you want to consider as an evolutionist, or as a creationist and you are trying to understand evolution, is evolution was proposed many times and it was always shut down. But it got to a level where the scientific knowledge of the time couldn't disprove it enough. But I believe now we're at the level of technology where it is disprovable and we can actually just say categorically no, evolution is not true. Um, Louis Pasteur was one of them. They said it was about bacteria. Um, the one he destroyed was non-life. They were trying to promote that non-life um, was evolving, and it was at the bacterial level. Louis Pasteur actually said no, bacteria wasn't evolving. It was actually coming through the air, and that's what was making it. That was how it was getting around. They were trying to say it evolved in a beaker, spontaneously evolved, and he worked out that it was actually getting there. The bacteria was getting there by through the air. You just couldn't see it. So he was the last. That was the last uh, one which was proposed about non-life, spontaneous generation, we'll call it, and he just proved it nice. Before that, there were all sorts of funny ones. There was rats being spontaneously generated from garbage. That would make you laugh, I think, because we all know that it's the garbage attracted the rats, not created life. But this is the scientific viewpoints. They wanted to believe. Remember, I believe the devil created the idea of evolution. I believe that, and I believe he's been trying to get mankind to want to believe it for a long, long time, not just recent, like Darwin's idea. In fact, it's thousands of years old. Greeks had it. Hinduism actually is built upon it. And so it has been around for a long, long time in different religions, and I think it's obvious most world religions actually have it in one form or another, except for the Bible. And since the Bible is used by two faiths, the Jewish and the Christian, then they are two faiths that don't believe it, believe in creation, and the Mormon, not the Mormon, the Muslim book was written 600 years after the newest part of the Bible, and um, they basically copied the Bible's creation account, and they also don't believe in evolution, but they're the only ones. Everyone else every religion is well down that path. So Darwin proposed it and made it a modern theory. That's all he did, and his proposed theory, unfortunately, was beyond a lot of the scientific means to actually discover it. As it went down to the single-celled organism mutating upwards, and etc. And so, but the single-celled organism was beyond the study of men to be able to really analyze as no, it's impossible. Okay, so but now it has, and when people study in genetics single-celled organisms, they realize there is more to a single cell than meets the eye. The cell wall itself on a cell, the cell wall, just the wall alone, is incredible complex piece of machinery with ports that open and close, and it's incredible. Nearly it's impossible to believe that even the wall itself could evolve from non-intelligence or randomness, let alone the machinery and the manufacturing factories within a cell. Within a cell, they have actual mini factories that replicate and produce uh, products, and they have a reader machine that goes down the DNA strand and reads this thing. These machinery are actually just as complex as machinery that we build. So they're inside the cell. So each one itself is incredibly complex and amazing in what they do. And this is the apparently simple cell. Now, well, not one of them. The cell itself could not do anything without the machinery inside, and the machinery could not survive or do anything without the cell. And this is why proponents, one of I mean, there is studying evolution when you go right down to the base level. It relies on mutation, but the problem is there's no starting. The first thing to start mutation, there's nothing that can start right at the beginning. So a creationist argument is, of course, irreducible complexity, and that is really well illustrated in a cell when you see all the amazing machinery and what they do and how complex everything is. Nothing can work without something else working, and they can't have changed because there's no way they could all spontaneously generate at the same time. These machinery things generating at the same time with the cell generating around them spontaneously, that's just beyond reason. So irreducible complexity has always been one of the proponents of arguments for intelligent design. But when you study actual, it's way more than just a cell wall. There's way more. It basically logically cuts through evolution right at the beginning of the theory itself. And so where in mutation and small changes occur, they believe in evolution. There's these small changes that gradually improve and life evolves. The irreducible, it seems intelligent at a certain level, but when you cut through it, irreducible complexity cuts right to the core, and basically that argument falls apart. There is no real evolutionists cannot argue or get around that simple fact. Okay, so there's one problem with the theory, and it is a huge problem. Okay, it's the biggest problem. There's no way they can get past it. Now, another one is, so you get all the ingredients is necessary for life, and you put them in a nice little vat. You charge it with electricity, and voila, it produces life. And people have done experiments and said, yes, we've produced life. Yeah, we've done it. So they're saying, this is what they're saying, they've set up the test conditions, and then they've zapped it with electricity, and they've produced life. Again, rationally, scientists who are intelligent have produced life by their experiments. Even if they have produced life, which they actually, when they were analysed, they didn't, okay, but they just used life because it's so controversial. But when they analysed, they didn't. But still, the whole thing, what they were trying to prove, it fails, because intelligence was used by them. They're intelligent beings trying to produce life by an experiment that again does not match up. Okay, so they're trying to create conditions for life to happen by using intelligence. Okay, so that doesn't really help, even if they managed to do it, and they didn't. So again, it's a big fail. If scientists with all their brilliance and can't do it anyway, that's saying, I think that says a lot, that it probably couldn't happen by accident. Okay, other thing is, Yeah, at a cosmic scale, let's even look at it at the Big Bang level. Okay, Big Bang. They don't have a mechanism why anything blew up in the first place, let alone where the matter came from in the first place. Okay, so right at the beginning of everything, it doesn't stack up there. Um, Time-wise, they don't have the time. Even if you believe in the time frame, evolutionist time frame, the amount of life uh, on our planet and species and all sorts of stuff, there isn't the time for evolution when broken down into how long it takes to evolve using this apparent mechanism of mutation. They don't have the time. It does actually, they run out of time. And it gets back to, we do not believe that a cat will change into a dog in 100 years. Okay, we know that doesn't happen. It has never happened. Um, so evolutionists don't actually, even with their time frame, they don't have the time required when analyzed on a time scale. So that, I think, is a huge flaw as well. I don't think a lot of evolutionists have actually bothered to try and calculate the time needed for evolution to actually be true. And if they did do the study and the necessary means, like put in the time, they would realize, oops, even our time scale doesn't work. Doesn't Maybe they'll change their time scale to fit their theory. That's what they do, don't they? We'll just put another few trillion years on the formula. Hey, Bob's your uncle. Okay. Um, let's have a look at some Earth. Just looking at Earth, I said there was world clocks and that are used. Now, I said there was only three that evolutionists used to prove the age of the Earth, and that was the radiometric dating system, the different ways of doing that. But there are some other ways that they usually they do pop up with and say this proves along Earth. Ice core samples. Um, they reported that when they did the core samples at the Arctic, and they'd write down that they found like 100,000 years or something like that, some really big ages, which would blow out the Bible's estimate of 6,000 years, wouldn't it? And so they were happy, yay, we have solid evidence, proof, fact, that the world is not 6,000 years old. So they were delighted that, hey, we've beaten the creationists and the Earth can't be 6,000 years old. It's impossible. Ice core samples. Okay, but then, wonderfully, God, I believe, actually, probably intervened, and they miraculously stumbled across a aeroplane that had gone down during the war, and it was either World War One or World War Two, and they found it under the ice when they were doing samples. And so remember, they had their theory about how old each sample was, and that they could prove the age of the Earth. Okay, that it's older. When they actually came across this wreck in the ice, and they dug down, they found that unfortunately the core samples and the dates going down to when the plane went were in the thousands of years. But they knew categorically that that plane, because they researched where it was, where it had come from, that it was actually in the war and crashed and then been covered by snow and then basically it built up over the top of it. So their whole layers and everything, that the core sample layer theory from the ice obviously was completely incorrect in their ages, and that it was only 40 or 60 years old since it had been buried. And when they looked through and they started looking at the layers, they realized, oh, it was actually doing seasons and all sorts of stuff in between. It wasn't just doing what they thought when they were counting years and stuff. So, uh, again, a big fail, unfortunately. See, nice try, but failed. Okay, so that was unfortunate, but it's funny in a way, isn't it? That it failed. Um, the let's have a look at the bones. That was a big thing. A creation story said, well, where are all these? Darwin, when he said his theory, he said there are every life has evolved, like from animal to animal to animal, and there's in between transitional states between these animals. That you've got to remember, it's got to come from every animal has to have transitioned. Every animal we say has to have a transitional state between it. Not we're not talking just monkeys to men with all the in between transitionals. We're talking from where did the monkeys come from? Where did our cats come from? Where did our chicken, our rooster, our octopus? We are the transitional states for every form of animal. And so Darwin said, yeah, admittedly, um, we haven't. He said, I think the reason why we haven't found these transitional animals is because we haven't been digging long enough. And so he even admitted that that was a real problem. And he said, but don't worry, in time, I predict in time we will find the transitional fossils in evidence for this theory, for the theory in time. We just haven't had enough time to find these fossils. And since Darwin, and we've had quite a number of years now since Darwin, um, they still have not found any the transitional fossils. We're not talking just one transitional fossils they need. We're talking transitional fossils across the board from animal life. They haven't found any. Okay, they purport a few animals now and then, a reptile and a bird-looking one, but you find one, whoop-de-woo. That doesn't show the transitional forms. The actual fossil record they're saying is incomplete. We haven't. That's what Darwin's saying. We haven't found the fossils to show the fossil record as being complete. I believe we've found enough of the fossil record to have it analysed and look at the theory and realise no, there aren't the transitional ones that evolution requires. I believe we've had the time, we've dug up thousands and possibly more than that fossils now, and they're just the reason why we haven't found them is because they don't exist. Okay, and that's the truth. So evolution, every now and then I hope in the paper, yay, we found the transitional one that proves evolution. Uh, you've got to see that in a way, either they're playing on people's ignorance, or I don't know, either they're playing on the people's ignorance, or they really don't know their own theory well enough. One transitional animal or fossil does not prove evolution at all. In fact, it actually shows how weak the theory is because they haven't got the millions of transitional fossils. There should be an abundance of transitional fossils if the theory is correct. They haven't. They celebrate when they find one, and when that one is found, like the nice bird reptile one they purport as being a transitional one. Well, it's probably an extinct animal. Let's face it. All the rest are animal ones, and we have them, and we can see, oh, that's extinct, that's extinct. They haven't found transitionals. This one, there's no reason to believe it's just not another extinct animal. Okay, so it's actually quite ludicrous how the length people go to try and prove their theory when it clearly does not stack up. There are not millions of transitional fossils being found at all. Okay, and the ape ones. Now this is embarrassing in a way. They find the apes, go, oh, yeah, here we go. We can see the transitional for the ape to man. Oh, here's another ape skull. Oh, here's another one. And they can make these collection. Now, out of all the ape ones they dig up, I had a really neat book with about 30 or 40 of the ape ones that they've put forward. Anyway, now, every single one that has been put forward has been disproven. Now, that isn't well known, and they don't, scientists, evolutionists don't like to actually put those results out, unfortunately. So in a way, if you go to a museum, they probably still put on display things that have been disproven and thrown out. Um, there was a nice one, I think it was called Nebraska Man, was put forward. One called a skull, or Nebraska Man, and in a museum they would have him walking like a half-ape man with a fire and all family and living in a cave. Nebraska Man was a tooth. So the whole thing about Nebraska Man, the story about what he ate and what he lived, it was a tooth. They found a tooth, and they made up this Nebraska Man story, and that he was the in-between between apes and men. When they studied the tooth, they found out actually it wasn't actually an ape tooth at all or anything. It was a pig's tooth, and the pig was an extinct species. So that was kind of, I would be embarrassed. Okay, who on earth promoted Nebraska Man from a tooth as a scientist, and who made all these amazing displays of him sitting around a campfire and all this, and what he looked like from a pig's tooth? Wouldn't you like just want to hide your head in shame if you did that? But no, they're quite happy to not worry about it, and not even tell people that that's what they did. Next one was they just one skull after another. Lucy, okay, Lucy, the famous Lucy skeleton was found, and that was to prove that apes. This was the ape apparently that walked upright and ran around upright. Now, let's just first of all think about it logically. So what if there was an ape that could walk upright? Does that prove evolution? No. That possibly proves there was an ape that could walk around upright. Okay? Not proving evolution. It might be an extinct ape that could walk around upwards. Does that mean we evolved from it? No. Doesn't actually prove anything. It proves there is an ape that could walk around upwards. If that is actually what they find. What they found was a skeleton, and then, remember, they believe in the rock layer theory, okay? But they obviously disregard the theory when it suits them, obviously. Because Lucy was found, and then k's and k's away, in a different layer, strata layer, they find a knee bone, which they said belonged to Lucy. Now, this was found 2 k's away or something. Ridiculous. Different rock layers. Now, I don't believe in the rock layer theory anyway, but they do. So they aren't even being consistent. And they say, oh yeah, this is the upright walking ape Lucy in transitional form. What? You're supposed to be a scientist, you're supposed to be logical, you're supposed to be reasoning. What are you doing? My only thought could be maybe it's funding. Maybe they needed funding. Maybe they wanted to have their name on a journal. They want to be famous. Maybe that's what's pushing them so hard to try and reach these outrageous conclusions. I don't know. Anyway, that was a big fail. And so every single one skull and thing put forward has been a big, massive, embarrassing fail, which evolution is quite happy to not mention and publish in Time magazine or anything, and tell National Geographic. They don't want to put anything out there that embarrasses them, even when they fail. Another cool one was the Russian scientists found a human footprint. This is geology. We'll jump over to geology. They find this human footprint alongside, in the same layer of mud, which is crustified over and all that, with a dinosaur footprint. And they go, what would be your conclusion then? Now remember, these Russian evolutionists are believing that man evolved millions of years, tens of millions of years after the dinosaurs, and that there were no dinosaurs running around at the same time as man. So what would you conclude if you were a strong believer in evolution and There's these footprints side by side in the same layer. Um, oh dear. I know as a person looking at the evidence, I would conclude maybe, well, they must have existed at the same time. That would be the simplest conclusion, I would think, rationally. But what they concluded was this was now evidence for aliens having visited our planet. And they put that in the newspaper. We have found evidence for aliens visiting our planet 60 million years ago. We found their footprints with the dinosaur footprints. Um, Aliens, really? You you believe so strongly in evolution that your conclusion of footprints side by side has to prove aliens, and you are rational scientists. You're rational. Um, I find that odd. Okay. Now, my conclusion is no, they weren't aliens. They were human footprints. They were just like human footprints. Okay, so this is the weird part. These aliens 60 million years ago had human footprints as well. Okay. Um, no, dinosaurs and men maybe walked around at the same time. Okay. It's a fear. It's actually should be making you try to possibly realize your age of everything is out of kilter. That should be what you should be looking at. Your ages for everything is the problem here, not the evidence. The evidence is speaking. Okay, you're just not listening. You're so indoctrinated and brainwashed that you do not want to see the evidence. And in fact, you're coming to quite ridiculous, ludicrous conclusions because of your um, brainwashing. I can only think of it being as brainwashing. Um, so anyway, I would be more embarrassed to, instead of saying, hey, maybe the strata layer theory is in danger, it's incorrect, maybe we're wrong about dinosaurs and men being different ages. That I would have been more embarrassed by saying aliens came to our planet 60 million years ago. Okay, but that's what they did, and that's what they put in the newspaper. Well, that's okay. That's a couple. Ah, man, the list is just endless. No matter what you look at, it's endless. Endless embarrassment, endless fails, and just one after another craziness. Okay, all the ingredients of life in one area, you spark it. It does not create a living thing. Okay, and they tried to experiment. And I started talking about this earlier. They one of the reasons why the writer of Chemical Evolution, who became a Christian, one of the things he could not get around was chemicals themselves don't turn into life, no matter which way you put them together, like a jigsaw piece. They do not create life. In fact, they'll be inanimate. They will not. They can't. They won't go over and create something like a machine, even if you put it together. Um, the raw ingredients do not just go and make something or do something. And, they have to be programmed, and this is one of the strong evidences in genetics for creation. Um, Raw elements need to be programmed. Okay, um, and that means that requires a programmer, which requires intelligence again. And so when we look at DNA, for instance, the DNA has an actual coding system and information put into the DNA, and the information is separate from the element. The information in the DNA in the element is separate from the element. It's put into it, and it has the information in it. Now you can't get around that. And yes, the more you think about it, the more you study it, the more you realize, it has to take intelligence to program um, the elements. I've studied programming, and I'm well aware that you have to make an intelligent program that does something. You have to actually have a programmer who writes the code. And I've written many programs, and they aren't writing themselves, and there has to be information being put in. Okay, so DNA itself, DNA is incredible evidence that there is a intelligent coding system for one. It's an intelligent coding system being put into an element which requires intelligence. Okay, I would say DNA, honestly, how can anyone get past DNA? DNA coding system, an intelligent coding system. We've not seen an intelligence coding system or a coding system like DNA spontaneously generated from nothing. We've never seen that. It is we've seen patterns in nature like beautiful crystals forming, like fractal mathematics. We can look at a snowflake and all that, and patterns in nature, and that's really nice. But that pattern does not represent a code. Okay, it does not represent the letter A or B or anything like that. It's a pattern. So we can see patterns in nature, but we never see codes in nature that are generated naturally. Never. There is not one example, and I challenge you to find one. But yes, we can see beautiful patterns in nature forming, but patterns never are about information. DNA is a coding system, and it's about information. It's not a pattern. There's no pattern to it. It is actually completely a different thing. Um, and so there is no known pattern, coding system that hasn't been made by intelligent design. And so I would say DNA is one of the strongest evidence, again, for creation. It's one of the strongest. It's not just the actual blocks themselves and the actual elements themselves need the information to actually do something, to actually be programmed to do something, and it's got to be put into them. It's not in them already, it's not in the elements, it has to be put into the elements, and so therefore we know intelligence from our observational history. If we want to look at science as being using observation, um, observational history tells us, looking at um, a code, um, it means intelligence, because that's where the only evidence of coding has come from observational, uh, scientific observational history. That's all we know. So really, if you say evolution is a fact, you have to overlook this, and you have to overlook observational scientific. You've got to actually say, you've got to go against scientific observation to try and disprove DNA itself. Okay, strong evidence. There's so many that I could go on for years. I'll do another one.